Most people think money changes your life only when the numbers get big. 100,000, a quarter million, seven figures. But the truth is far stranger. Your real financial transformation begins much earlier, quietly, almost invisibly, around one number most people never take seriously: $30,000. Because before $30,000, money feels heavy. Every decision feels risky. Every setback feels personal. Every dollar feels like it came out of your hide. You're not thinking about wealth. You're thinking about survival. You check your account before going to sleep. You rehearse worst-case scenarios in your head. A flat tire could ruin your month. A medical bill could wipe out a year. But something shifts when you cross $30,000. Not in your lifestyle, not in your spending, but in the way your brain works. Fear gets quieter. Breathing gets easier. And for the first time, money stops behaving like a fragile object you need to protect and starts behaving like a tool you can use. You stop asking, "Can I afford this?" and start asking, "Is this the smartest use of my money?" You stop thinking like someone who's trying to get ahead and start thinking like someone who can actually build something. This is the threshold nobody talks about, the moment before the real acceleration begins. And understanding it could change your entire relationship with wealth. So let's break down what really happens when everything changes after $30,000. Before $30,000, the journey feels nothing like wealth building. It feels like carrying your entire financial life on your back. At $2,000 saved, you're not building, you're bracing. One emergency can erase months of progress. You wake up checking your balance, hoping nothing unexpected hit overnight. At $5,000, the pressure is still constant. Every decision comes with a background hum of fear. A dentist appointment, a cracked phone, a car repair. Any of them could knock you back to zero. You're not planning the future. You're trying to survive the present. This stage drains more than your bank account. It drains your energy, your focus, your confidence. You start wondering if wealth is only for people who earn more, spend less, or live a different life entirely. And that belief alone slows your progress more than any bill ever could. When you finally reach $10,000, things shift, but only slightly. You feel a small exhale. For the first time in years, you're not terrified of a minor emergency. You can breathe, but only at the surface. You're not drowning anymore, but you're still fighting the current. And that's the part most people misunderstand. The early stage is not about growing wealth. It's about stabilizing your life long enough for wealth to eventually have a chance. Your decisions are still emotional. Your planning is still reactive. Your money doesn't work for you yet because it can't. Not at this level. You're laying the foundation, slowly, quietly, and often without any sign that it will ever pay off. This is the most exhausting part of the journey, and it's exactly why so many people quit long before the real transformation begins. Reaching $10,000 feels like stepping out of a storm. The wind is still strong, the sky still gray, but for the first time, you're not fighting for stability with every breath. You have room to think, not long-term, just enough to stop panicking. This is the milestone of safety. It doesn't create wealth, it creates margin, a small layer of protection that separates you from the constant fear of slipping back to zero. But something interesting happens here. Even though nothing external changes, same job, same bills, same routine, your mind starts processing money differently. You no longer treat every dollar like glass. You start seeing it as something that can hold weight. You begin making decisions with a little more distance. You compare prices instead of reacting to them. You start questioning habits you never noticed before. Not because you suddenly became more disciplined, but because your brain finally has the oxygen to evaluate choices instead of defending itself from emergencies. At $10,000, you're not wealthy by any metric, but you're no longer in survival mode. And that shift matters more than the number itself. Still, this isn't freedom. Your money isn't building anything yet, it's standing guard, protecting you from life's randomness. A popped tire is annoying, not catastrophic. A medical copay is inconvenient, not destructive. But here's the catch. Safety feels so rare for most people that they mistake it for progress. They feel better. So they assume they're further ahead than they are. And that's where people get stuck, because $10,000 gives you comfort, but it doesn't give you momentum. It's a milestone worth celebrating, but not one worth settling for. The real shift hasn't happened yet. That comes later, when your money stops acting like a shield and starts acting like a tool. Crossing from $10,000 to $20,000 feels different. Not dramatic, not life-changing, but undeniably different. At $20,000, you finally move out of pure defense. Your finances stop feeling like a minefield where a single mistake sends you backward. You're no longer bracing for the next unexpected expense. You're starting to make choices with intention instead of instinct. This is the first time you feel genuinely in control. Not powerful yet, just steady. You can absorb bigger surprises without derailing your year. You can leave a toxic job if a better one appears. You can take your first real steps into investing, not because it's exciting, but because it finally feels possible. The emotional tone changes too. Money stops feeling fragile. It becomes something you can shape instead of something that shapes you. You start checking your balance less out of fear and more out of curiosity. But here's the truth people rarely admit. At $20,000, you're still the engine. Your progress still relies almost entirely on discipline, sacrifice, and consistency. Your dollars haven't started carrying meaningful weight. They're moving, but they're still being pushed. This creates a deceptive sense of progress. You feel better, so you think you're closer. You feel stable, so you assume the hard part is over. And that illusion is dangerous. Because $20,000 is not a point of acceleration. It's a point of preparation. You're not building wealth yet. You're building capacity. The capacity to take smarter risks, to plan further ahead, to say no to opportunities that don't align with your future. $20,000 is where the fog lifts just enough for you to finally see the path in front of you. But the climb is still yours. The weight is still yours. The momentum is still artificial. The real shift, the one that changes everything, doesn't happen here. It happens at $30,000. Between $20,000 and $30,000, something subtle and dangerous happens. You feel stable for the first time in years. The fear that used to follow you everywhere finally loosens its grip. You start believing you're doing well, even if nothing in your life has fundamentally changed. This is the most deceptive part of the journey, because comfort arrives long before transformation, and comfort convinces you to slow down. At $20,000, you can handle surprises. At $25,000, you feel responsible. And at $27,000, you tell yourself a quiet lie, I think I've made it. This is the plateau zone, the place where most people stall for years. Not because they lack discipline, not because they lack ambition, but because they finally feel something they've craved for so long. Relief. Relief is addictive. It makes you loosen the habits that got you here. You stop learning about money because you're no longer in pain. You stop pushing because stability feels good enough. You stop optimizing because the urgency disappears. And that's the problem. The space between $20,000 and $30,000 isn't just another stretch of road. It's the psychological wall that separates the people who build wealth from the people who only flirt with it. Most people never push through this wall. They build a small cushion, enjoy the comfort, and then stay there indefinitely. The momentum they had fades, their savings stop growing, their investments stay small, their opportunities shrink because they're no longer actively seeking them. But the hardest truth is this. Stopping at $20,000 robs you of the transformation that happens in the next stage, because $30,000 is not just more money. It's a different financial reality, a different mindset, a different relationship with time, opportunity, and risk. The danger isn't failing before $20,000. The danger is getting comfortable before $30,000. If you stop here, you never experience the shift that changes everything. Crossing $30,000 doesn't feel like fireworks. There's no dramatic celebration, no sudden upgrade in lifestyle, no moment that loudly declares you've entered a new financial era. But something changes, quietly, internally, and permanently. At $30,000, your brain stops treating money as a fragile resource and starts treating it as a functional asset. Not a shield you desperately hold, but a tool you can finally use. This is where the science kicks in. Behavioral economists call it the shift from scarcity thinking to strategic thinking. When you have $30,000, your decisions stop coming from fear. They come from clarity. Suddenly, you're not asking, how do I survive this month? You're asking, what's the smartest move from here? That subtle shift is the real milestone, not the number itself. Your dollars stop behaving like passengers in the back seat. They become workers you can deploy with purpose. Some dollars protect your stability. Others go to investments that actually move the needle. Some explore new opportunities, skills, projects, strategies that were impossible when every decision carried emotional weight. You stop obsessing over small purchases and start focusing on what truly compounds. A $100 expense no longer feels like a threat. It feels like a question. Is this the highest return for this dollar? You start thinking in terms of allocation instead of sacrifice. Trade-offs become strategic instead of painful. And for the first time, you can look a few years ahead without feeling overwhelmed. This is why $30,000 feels different. Not because it buys luxury, but because it buys perspective. You finally have enough margin to make decisions based on opportunity instead of fear, enough confidence to act instead of react, and enough financial breathing room to start building instead of just maintaining. This is the quiet threshold where wealth building truly begins. Something unexpected happens when you reach $30,000, not in your bank account, in your identity. For the first time, you gain a superpower. The ability to say no. Before $30,000, you accept whatever life offers. A mediocre salary? You take it. A toxic job? You endure it. A bad deal? An unfair schedule? An opportunity that drains you? You swallow it because you feel like you can't afford to walk away. But with $30,000 behind you, the dynamic flips. You're no longer negotiating from fear. You're negotiating from strength. Saying no becomes possible, and that single shift improves your life more than any raise or promotion. You can refuse a job that underpays you. You can decline working extra hours for free. You can walk away from people or situations that drain your time, energy, or progress. Not out of arrogance, but out of strategy. No power changes the quality of every decision you make because when you're not desperate, you can finally choose based on value instead of survival. You start asking the questions people in control. Does this align with my future? Is this worth my attention? Is this an opportunity or a distraction? And here's the part most people overlook. When you can say no with confidence, your yes becomes sharper, wiser, and more profitable. You no longer jump at the first job offer. You choose the one that fits your trajectory. You don't cling to side hustles that burn you out. You pick the ones that compound. You're selective with investments, relationships, and projects because you're not operating from panic anymore. This shift isn't about money, it's about leverage. $30,000 give you the breathing room to stop reacting to life and start directing it. And once you experience that kind of clarity, you'll never want to go back. Crossing $30,000 doesn't just change your finances, it rewires how you interpret the world. Before this point, every money decision is emotional. You save with guilt. You spend with anxiety. You invest with hesitation. You evaluate choices based on what they might take from you, not what they might build. But at $30,000, that lens flips. You stop seeing money as something scarce and start seeing time as the real limited asset. Suddenly, spending 2 hours trying to save $20 feels like bad math. You begin valuing your energy differently. Convenience becomes efficiency, not weakness. Your decisions shift from minimizing loss to maximizing impact. Risk transforms too. Before $30,000, anything outside your routine feels dangerous. A course, a certification, a new job, a new investment. Every move feels like a threat to your stability. Now, you see the truth. The biggest risk is staying exactly where you are. You no longer ask, what if it goes wrong? You ask, what could this unlock? Fear becomes data. Curiosity becomes strategy. And then opportunities appear. Opportunities that were always there but invisible to a mind stuck in survival mode. You notice better jobs, better projects, better investments, better uses of your time, not because the world changed, but because you did. At $30,000, money stops dictating your decisions. It starts supporting them. You stop living for the next bill. You start thinking in chapters, not weeks. This is where your financial brain finally upgrades from reactive to strategic. At $30,000, you step into a new financial territory, the territory of real options, not fantasies, not dreams. Actual usable options that expand your future instead of draining your present. This is the stage where you can finally invest without fear. A $1,000 course no longer feels reckless. It feels like an asset, a skill that increases your earning power for decades, a certification that gives you leverage in negotiations, a new ability that compounds faster than any index fund. You start to understand something most people never realize. Knowledge has one of the highest returns on earth. Investments also shift from symbolic to meaningful. You're no longer buying $50 positions that barely move. You can build actual allocations, index funds, retirement accounts, diversified holdings that produce visible results. You're not dabbling anymore. You're building. Even your career opens up. You can switch industries without panic. You can take time to learn a new skill. You can explore a business idea without risking collapse. You finally have the margin to experiment, and experimentation is the birthplace of opportunity. The most powerful part? You can afford to fail small. A mistake doesn't erase your progress. A setback doesn't knock you to zero. You can recover quickly, learn faster, and move forward with confidence. That's the real value of $30,000. Not comfort, not lifestyle upgrades, but the ability to grow. Intentionally, strategically, repeatedly. $30,000 isn't about what you can buy. It's about the doors you can finally walk through. Reaching $30,000 gives you something more valuable than momentum. It gives you the ability to stop relying on willpower. Until now, your entire journey depended on discipline. You saved because you forced yourself to save. You resisted temptations because you had no choice. You pushed forward because the alternative was falling behind. But willpower is inconsistent. It tires, it breaks, and anyone who tries to build wealth relying only on discipline eventually burns out. That's why $30,000 matters. It's the first moment where you can replace willpower with structure. Systems begin to carry the weight you use to carry a loan. Automatic transfers become non-negotiable. Your savings happen before you even see the money. Your investments continue whether you feel motivated or not. Your financial life starts running on rails instead of emotions. You stop trying to outthink the market and start using automation to remove guesswork. You aren't chasing timing. You're building consistency. And consistency compounds. You also begin tightening your financial environment. Subscriptions disappear. Impulse purchases fade. Your money finally flows where it's supposed to, because you designed it that way, not because you tried harder. This is the moment your role changes. You're no longer the engine. You're the architect. Your job isn't to push anymore. It's to maintain the system that pushes for you. That's the secret nobody talks about. Wealth doesn't accelerate because you become stronger. It accelerates because your system stops depending on your strength. And $30,000 is the threshold where that system finally comes alive. The most powerful transformation after $30,000 isn't financial. It's who you become in the process. Because hitting $30,000 proves something you can't learn from books or gurus. You can delay gratification on a meaningful scale. You can follow a plan long enough for results to appear. You can build stability with your own hands. That proof changes you. You stop seeing yourself as someone trying to get ahead. You start seeing yourself as someone who can build intentionally, consistently, successfully. The doubts that used to paralyze you lose their power. You've already done something difficult. You've already pushed through the slow years. You've already held the line when it felt pointless. Now, your confidence isn't motivational. It's earned. Decisions become cleaner. Goals become clearer. Your future stops feeling like a question and starts feeling like a direction. You stop chasing external validation. You stop fearing small setbacks. You stop comparing yourself to people who got lucky because you're not hoping anymore. You're executing. And that's the identity shift that separates people who coast from people who compound. $30,000 isn't the finish line. It's the first time the person you're becoming is more powerful than the number in your account. And once that identity takes shape, everything changes. Your habits, your opportunities, your expectations, your trajectory. This is the real milestone, not the money, but the version of you who emerges after earning it. If this video helped you understand why the $30,000 milestone changes everything, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories that reveal how money really works. And tell us in the comments, what's the biggest challenge holding you back from your first $30,000? And remember, every dollar you save today is a silent worker that never clocks out.